Do you want to know what the fallen are, little one? In a sense, they are angels, but not the angels your mom imagines she prays to. Brass trumpets picnicking in the clouds. In their true essence, they are great swirling engines of wing and blood, fiery eyes that peer around the corners between worlds. Dark, radiant things conjured from fresh battlefields. A Frankenstein's Valkyrie, forever crashing to Midgard. What grief demands their hate? What vast cannibal hunger?
Welcome to the Fallen Cycle Mythos Fiction Podcast. This universe is full of secrets, waiting for those brave or foolhardy enough to seek them out. Cycle 2, Party at the World's End.
Welcome back to the Fallen Cycle Mythos Fiction Podcast. I've had a bit of a hiatus playing through a whole bunch of RPGs for the Modern Mythology podcast and getting into the weeds with that, which is, of course, ongoing, but I've carved out a chunk of time for getting together our next audio theater serialized fiction extravaganza. I don't really have a proper term for the format we're doing here. It's a bit like with Tales, where it makes perfect sense in the style of the story for it to be illustrated in the old fairy tale picture book format, but no one nowadays seems to know what to do with that format. And, here's a project that isn't quite audiobook, isn't quite soundtrack, isn't quite several other things. Rock opera. Part of why I've chosen to release these free as a podcast is precisely for this reason, so I can stick to the format that actually makes sense for the material. And I don't have to give a shit, frankly, about what publishers think about that. It's more or less what's kept me primarily indie and niche for 20 plus years, I'm sure, of media production, but I don't see any way around it. Most popular formats don't quite work for me, at least not universally. So yeah, I really went down the rabbit hole on the soundtrack for these next two seasons, season 5 and season 6, because the story itself really calls for the soundtrack to not only be prominent, but also a featured portion of the story itself. The story I'm talking about, of course, is Party at the World's End. Chronologically, this was actually the first novel in the Fallen Cycle, although for various reasons, I decided to syndicate it second here on the podcast. One of those reasons is that while I try to keep full-length books in the cycle self-contained, some of the framing may land a bit more cleanly after you finish Tales from When I Had a Face, especially in terms of Lilith's arc. That said, if you're just joining us, you can absolutely start here. I wrote this book on and off between 2004 or thereabouts when Join My Cult was published, and I decided to work on a sequel of some sort in 2014 in a variety of formats and editions over that time. So returning to it for me personally was a trip for any number of reasons. At one point, it was even a screenplay, which was briefly optioned. I haven't really looked at the book much since then, so I dithered for a while about whether I should bring it into the podcast at all. Obviously, I decided to. But part of that decision was to avoid tinkering too much with the prose itself. There's a lot I might write differently today, but that's part of the point. So while there was some trimming and minor tweaks for audio and certainly for framing, I avoided any open heart surgery of the words themselves. The other part was to lean all the way into one of the book's core concepts and bring a fictional Babylon directly into the story through the music. That's the rock opera bit. Although, don't worry, it's not actually like an opera. For this one, the music is even more tightly woven into the storyline, drawn from a stack of incomplete concept albums that I'm finally able to stitch together and tie directly into the text. It's been an absolute blast, whether in creating MIDI lines out of the old ideas or synthesizing something new out of the old bones using good old-fashioned technological necromancy. A lot of the roots go back to jams, demos, and projects from about 20 years ago. I won't belabor that history, except to say that although these are entirely new editions of that material, some of the core ideas have been banging around for quite a long time. Some of the riffs, repeated refrains. Most of the lyrics and the music you'll hear were written very recently to support the story, but a few lines do survive from ye olden times. Props go out to the members of the original Babylon live act and everyone who sat in on the subcutaneous sessions back when. Returning to this material, I was reminded most of all how much any book or album is as much a product of a place and time and group of people directly or indirectly related. And of course, the book is entirely fictional. It's not about those times, but it still winds up bleeding in just through the voice. About the subject matter, as I've probably said before, author commentary is probably mostly worse than useless. Better to let the story speak for itself, although certainly not read literally, I hope. I'll just say this. Going back to it, to assemble these episodes, I was struck by how on the nose some of the satirical elements turned out to be. And much of it remained darkly funny, to me anyway. A lot of that came out of frustration with the cargo cult attempts to stave off disasters that were clearly on the horizon, even back then, at least in America, especially in America, I should say. It didn't feel so much like David and Goliath as Goliath and a kid with a squirt gun. It wasn't meant as political commentary, though, exactly, but more as a snapshot of a place and time. Of course, it also bears mentioning that the Fallen Cycle isn't quite our world. It's a nearby one, one universe over, that gives some room to play with those ideas without locking everything into one-to-one analogies, which I suppose makes all this meta-author commentary, which is probably even worse. So it's time to get to the story.
Season 5. Chapter 1, Some Still Despair in a Prozac Nation. Nothing on the face of this earth, and I do mean nothing, is half so dangerous as a children's story that happens to be real, and you and I are wandering blindfolded through a myth devised by a maniac. Master Li Kao, Tang Dynasty. The day nurse put on her jacket. She scrawled the final lines onto her daily report. Date, March 15th, 2012. Signature, Stephanie Ann Heichel. Her veiny hands looked fat. She was watching herself getting old, and there wasn't a damn thing to be done about it. She explained the events of the day to her replacement, handing her a clipboard in the process. It had been an uneventful day, she explained. No orderlies with oozing compound fractures. No flailing and howling. The worst was trying to get Dionysus to take his meds, which was more like arguing with a pedantic philosophy major than dealing with a schizophrenic. He was tedious, but not usually dangerous. Eventful days provided distraction. Home was a furnished apartment with a stained rug, an ungrateful bitch of a house cat who liked to urinate on furniture just because she could, and the absence of anyone to share it with. Dionysus was one of 3 patients brought in after some stunt at a mall, which turned ugly. The others, Johny, a maladjusted paranoid, most paranoids were maladjusted, right? And a gender dysphoric turnip with a genius IQ that referred to herself on good days as Jesus. It had never been entirely clear why they were dumped here. So many years spent working in the system, and its machinations remained opaque. But it stood to reason they had to be put somewhere, after all. Supposedly, Dionysus was the head of a cabal of domestic terrorists. She doubted it. It seemed to her that he was just as bored as she was, spinning imaginative yarns for the sake of juvenile entertainment. The only sign to the contrary was that anyone who spent too much time with him had a habit of going insane themselves. His mad prophecies were contagious to the weak-willed. After signing in and waving goodbye, the night shift nurse started walking down the hallway to 4th ward, where she would check on the patients, as if they were eggs coming off the factory line. Her shoes squeaked loudly on the yellow linoleum, making her task, confirming they were asleep and hadn't cracked overnight, slightly counterproductive. She clicked her tongue at herself, trying to walk more carefully.
Scritch, scritch, scritch. The night nurse waddles through the hallways on those god-awful rubber-soled shoes. Back and forth. I can't rationally blame her pacing for my insomnia, but I do it all the same. I feel the walls leering in at me each night as I roll around in my lice-infested bed, my eyelids clenched shut. They will probably look like 2 desiccated grapes by morning, swollen, sticky, and purple-veined, as I toss back the meds with bitter-tasting water. I just finished counting the blocks again. There are 551 cinder blocks, 104.5 floor tiles, and 25 asbestos-dusted ceiling tiles in my room. I've gone by Dionysus for a long time now. Good a name as any. But what's really in a name? I think about this often. Was it thanks to my namesake that a sentence of no sex or music and terrible food was such an unimaginable hell? Bored is bad. Bad for me. And even worse for the staff. I get creative when I get bored. Maybe those who tend the mental health machine are as much slaves as we are. I wouldn't know. stuck as I am on the inside of the metal-insulated plate glass. It's depressive ideation, the doctors say, to think about the poisonous PCBs polluting our body's water by proxy. It is an obsessive fixation to mention the soil, leached of its vital nutrients, leaving us all as hollow as dried gourds. Granting dreams equal reality with waking was magical thinking. They had a name for everything, a real obsession with sickness. They saw it everywhere. The lie is grinning talk show hosts, Prozac, reality TV, the American dream of normalcy, homogeneity, safety. The natural state of the human animal in troubling times is not happiness. Show me a man grinning in the trenches as the bombs fall, and I will show you a lunatic. They say that you can remain conscious for 4 minutes after your head is severed from your body. This entire nation is just like that head, desperately trying to tell itself that it was all a bad dream. The first couple of months in this place, I was sure the story wouldn't end here. I held out hope. I was, after all, just an overeager, idealistic kid. I thought I could break the cultural brainwash by hopping on a table with a toy gun and scream, "You're free!" Apparently that gets you incarcerated these days. The terrorists didn't just fly planes into buildings. After the World Trade Center was blasted to the ground, many in the States, certainly many in New York, witnessed an interesting transformation. In the weeks that followed, we looked at one another with new eyes. We were snapped awake, startled as if from a dream. And despite the horror, there was also a sense of possibility, even hope, in those new eyes. We all operate under the mandates of a myth until we are shown in a stark way that the previous illusion cannot hold. If you brave that passageway with eyes open, you spy just a fleeting glimpse at the naked truth before she is again wrapped in new cloth. Collectively, we couldn't face our nakedness. Instead of hope, we got fear. A solemn, reverent fear that feared laughter most of all. Somewhere in that twisted rubble lies the shattered remains of this country's sense of humor. I admit that the Shahada flag flying behind us in our propaganda video may have been a shade too far. Bottom line, ideas don't count for a whole lot in this world, but on their own, they're mostly benign. Ideals, on the other hand, get you a special jacket with one sleeve. Ideals get you shot. I lost that idealism as months turned into a year. Our guerrilla street teams of lunatics, whole lot of good they were to the two of us who weren't supposed to get caught. Jesus was lost to us all, wandering endlessly in an inner world of possibility. She would rather bask in an inner Eden than live in a world that deifies the flat line of an EKG. A world without moods or personality, a place where stability only equals stagnation and where genocide and rape in the name of national interest is fine so long as you choke down the meds and ride the neon escalator to Zombieland. Who could blame her? And Johny. Well, we're all a bit worried about Johny. Socrates said, "An unexamined life isn't worth living," didn't he? Well, an examined life inside a black box isn't a life at all. Each day atrophies my soul. I want to be drumming my hands to pieces deep in the woods. And with this damned 3-foot-tall Venusian goddess squatting just behind my shoulder, cow teats jangling and flapping wetly, her breath sweet like honey and milk, with the copper tang of blood? I mean, how can anyone expect to get any rest with that? It's just not right. Fuck, is it ever hard to get to sleep around here? The next day I was in the rec room. The drugs were just starting to wear off, and there was some awful cartoon playing on a beat-up TV hanging above us. "What's on the tube today?" Johny mumbled. "I don't know, man. You're the one that's been watching," I said, trying not to make eye contact. I think I still felt guilty about how he got locked in this place, though the blame for that really lay at Bradley the buyer's feet. Johny shrunk like a hermit crab into his scrubs. Then he rolled his eyes at me and did a complete 180 in effect. Pointing at the television, he yelled, "I played your games, bought your albums, and wore your fucking t-shirts. I was a pawn in your shit show. The only solution to a circle is a straight line, a straight beeline, out, over, beyond. The Mother Hive Brain Syndicate must be the line, beeline. Hit them where it counts." Triangle, he exclaimed, leaning back, his eyes bugging out. "Listen, you don't want to clue them into our plot," I said conspiratorially. "Triangle, beep, a beep it goes." He looked around suspiciously as he linked 3 paper clips together in a triangle, dipped it in nearby table syrup, and stuck it to his forehead, regally, as if it were a crown. "This is how I contact them, jam the signal, huh?" "Oh, hey, that's great," I said, wondering what kind of alchemical formula might turn me invisible. Suddenly hopeful, he chewed on a nail and then asked me, "Wait, will you pass it up the chain? Get a message to Bradley or Gabriel." He handed me a crumpled paper.
White walls are here forever because they caught me working. Bombed the Hive building. The imaginary flames danced and sank about me. Millions of souls were freed from slavery to the Great Eye. Novus Ordo Seclorum, Eye of Shiva, Blaster of Towers. Of course, the gatekeepers called me terrorist. Through the powers of sympathetic magic, the entire structure will topple in due time. This is high ritual and the ultimate sacrifice for the survival and evolution of my species. Even my friends and teachers have disowned me. Horus, the bull of your father, will be avenged. We can now return to our mother, whole. The dove resides within the blasted tower, and within that destruction, that madness, we lay the seed of the purest aspects of life. The whole structure erupted in a final, defiant exhalation, invisible but to the most subtle eyes. The empty legion sputters, Leviathan chokes. With ruthless hand you have destroyed this fair edifice. We children of Dionysus lock hands together and sing. In the temple of the temple of the temple of the holy sits a woman who is waiting for the sun in the temple of the temple, in the temple of the holy creeping shadows, falling darkness. She is waiting for the sun.
I honestly couldn't tell if he was fucking with me or not. He was never this crazy before the meds. I walked past him, giving up on TV. Time is different when you're locked up. The building takes on a life of its own. You're just a parasite in its metal and concrete bowels. Clocks dictate your movements, when drugs are administered, when it is time to eat, when it is time for walkies. Saturn rules us. This is the underworld. But the empty routine is what saves and breaks you in this place. Please understand, this is coming from someone who might find talking to a goddess while the world burns an entertaining but not otherwise abnormal experience. Maybe serpents writhe out from under her skirt. Maybe your nose is overwhelmed with the smell of sandalwood and you discover that she has a head like a rooster. Maybe you're both Egyptian gods. She has a screaming orgasm, and only then do you realize you both ate a 10 strip a few aeons ago. Etc., etc. My point is, I can handle that. That's normal, but this routine, it's like a snake coiled round my lungs. The routine nearly won. The story very well could have ended here. An endless procession of days lost in these hallways, living on antipsychotics, industrial food, coffee, and smuggled nicotine. Nights peering through cracked windows at starless skies. Routine said today was Wednesday. One-on-one time with Dr. Fine at noon. I took a quick glance at our ticking overlord. It was 11:45. At 11:47, the first glimmer of hope arrived in an unexpected place, a package from FedEx. I was scrawling another page in the journal Dr. Fine had asked me to keep for him. Instead, he got a jaunt through my head. Poor guy. As I looked up and paused to chew on my crayon, I locked gazes with a familiar, mischievous face. Loki. John Waters. Peter Lorre-looking motherfucker. He gave me one of those "don't blow my cover, asshole" stares. To be fair, that is how he usually looks at me. He's brought me a present. I lean back and take in a deep breath. The first full, down-to-the-stomach breath I've taken in months. Birds flutter outside the barred windows of the commons, the first signs I've seen of spring. Suddenly, time was on my side. Oh yes, it is. The orderlies walk up to me, two shambling golems with brains rendered little better than off-brand Jell-O by years of American Idol and a strict diet of high-fructose corn syrup. They drop a sorry-looking teddy bear. It stares back at me from the ground with button eyes. I'm not sure how buttons can look simultaneously cute and forlorn, but these do. Just a little lost, Mr. Teddy. This came in the mail today. It was from your family, one of them said. I pick it up. Mr. Teddy, you've come back to me. I amble back towards my room and try to look like I'm having a conversation with little men in the ceiling. My fingers run a pattern across threadbare fur. They come to something solid, deep inside its fuzzy little belly. Oh, Loki. If these are as good as the last batch, then the staff of this ward are in for an interesting evening. I'm sorry, Mr. Teddy. It looks like it's time for exploratory surgery, and I'm not exactly a doctor.
You have been listening to the Fallen Cycle Mythos podcast. Keep subscribed to receive new episodes as they are released at fallencycle.com or on the podcasting service of your choice. Party at the World's End was written by James Curcio. Thanks to J.F. Stackhouse and Nate Samsel for collaborating on early drafts of this story. The soundtrack was produced by James Curcio, with special thanks to various creative collaborators for inspiration and soundtrack source from old sessions, including, in no particular order, Scott Landis, Sean Marsden, Jen E., Gaetan, Sarah and Rahul Iyer, Martine Della Ruffa, David Bessel, Ari, and Nate Samsel. Cut the Sky's Throat, an album selected from this feature's soundtrack, is free to stream and will be available on Bandcamp. Music by Lilith, Dionysus, Cody, Jesus, and Ariadne. A statement on the use of neural networks is available on our website for those curious about how we do and don't use these technologies. This podcast is Creative Commons 3.0, Attribution, Share and Share alike, non-commercial use.